Chapter 1. The Coronado expedition explored the vast amount of land in what is now known as the western United States. It was only after the group had given up searching for the mythical 7 golden cities of Cibola that they came upon a large area of village dwellers which the Spaniards later named the Pueblo Indians. One night, while in the encampment, Sebastian encountered an Anasazi, or Ancient One, while on duty walking the perimeter. Almost immediately, he felt a fear unlike any he had experienced in his 30 years. He was hypnotized by the old man's soulless eyes and at once fell into a deep stupor. The Anasazi moved toward him swiftly, and suddenly time seemed to slow as Sebastian felt his body slowly crumble to the hard, rocky ground. Completely paralyzed except for his eyes, he could only watch in horror as this hechicero or witch doctor began to chant over him. Almost instantly, the night turned frigid. The extreme cold began to seep through Sebastian's clothing and into his bones. He lay on the dusty basin floor, helpless and shivering, as the Anasazi leaned over him, his eyes glassy as he blew smoke from his fetid breath into Sebastian's face. Powerless, he stared as the Ancient One began to convulse, and spittle formed around the corners of his cracked and parched mouth. It was only then that Sebastian noticed a large group of villagers had surrounded them, and they too began to chant incomprehensibly. Silently, Sebastian prayed someone from the expedition would hear the maniacal noise and come to his rescue, but he somehow knew they wouldn't or couldn't. They were probably under the same spell he was. Sebastian was trapped and felt the darkness enveloping him. Suddenly, the Anasazi stepped back and moved into the shadows. Sebastian felt his heart rate begin to slow, and he thought the worst was over, only to see a beautiful young woman striding over to his prone body. His gaze fell upon the scantily clad figure with long black hair cascading down over her shoulders. Their eyes met, and he was at once both terrified and filled with an indescribable desire at the sight of her exceptional green eyes that glowed with a light from somewhere deep within. It was at that very moment he felt his heart begin to thud in his chest once again. This time it began to race. The young woman looked down at Sebastian and smiled, her teeth white and gleaming in the moonlight. "You have been chosen," she said in perfect Spanish. Noticing a subtle change in the air, Sebastian struggled on the hard ground, trying to say something, his mind screaming in fear and confusion. His lips were closed firmly, and he was unable to move them. "You will not speak now. It is time for you to create and be created." The woman closed her eyes as if in meditation. She tilted her head back and opened her mouth, showing sharp incisors. She moaned loudly and looked back down at Sebastian, slowly licking her lips. Her gaze was that of a predator ready to strike. Beyond terror, Sebastian's eyes darted around to all of the villagers who were continuing to chant in some sort of altered state. No one looked directly at him. "Please, Mother of God, help me." His mind was clear, yet he was trapped in a body that could not move or speak. All at once, the young woman screamed out, and at her voice, the villagers all began to make a horrifying keening sound.